Once upon a very ordinary morning, nothing magical, nothing dramatic, there was a tiny city living quietly on your face. This city wasn't made of skyscrapers and highways. It was made of little doorways and tunnels, tiny sidewalks and soft walls. The city's name was Pore Town, and it didn't want fame. It didn't want trouble. It just wanted to run smoothly, day after day, doing the boring work that keeps skin comfortable. In Pore Town, every pore was a doorway. Every doorway had a job. Let the gentle oil river flow out. Let the tiny cell confetti drift away. Keep the neighborhood calm. Most days, Pore Town did fine. But sometimes, especially when the big human upstairs got nervous, Pore Town would have a problem. A little traffic jam would happen in a doorway, and the top of the jam would turn darker at the surface. The big human would look in the mirror and gasp, a blackhead. And then the trouble would begin. Now, in this story, we're not going to yell at anyone. We're not going to shame the big human. We're going to watch what happens with kindness. Because Pore Town isn't bad and the big human isn't bad. They're just stuck in a loop. And loops can be unwound. Let's meet our characters. First, there's Mayor Barrier, a calm leader who keeps the city walls strong and comfy. Mayor Barrier doesn't like drama. Mayor Barrier likes steady routines and gentle handling. Then there's River Sebum, the oil river that flows out of the doorways. River Sebum isn't a villain. River Sebum is a helper who keeps things soft and protected. Next, there's a cheerful crew called the Cell Confetti Tiny Flakes that are supposed to float away like little paper bits after a parade. Cell confetti is normal. It shows up every day. And finally, there's a character who causes trouble not because it's evil, but because it's persistent. Captain Friction, the wind that rubs and rubs and rubs masks, straps, phone edges, hands on chin, thinking, sleeve wiping sweat. Captain Friction is small but relentless. And then, of course, there's the big human upstairs, who sometimes becomes the inspector. The inspector brings the magnifying mirror and the bright light and a very serious face. The inspector thinks more looking will lead to more control. But in Pore Town, more looking often leads to more poking, and more poking leads to more trouble. One morning, the inspector leaned in close and saw tiny dots on the nose hills. The inspector didn't see a peaceful city. The inspector saw danger. "Emergency!" the inspector shouted. Pore Town's citizens froze. Mayor Barrier sighed. "Here we go again," the mayor murmured. The inspector grabbed a scrub brush, big, rough, loud, and started scrubbing the nose hills like they were dirty dishes. The sidewalks shook. The walls trembled. River Sebum, startled, splashed around. Cell confetti, confused, clumped together. Mayor Barrier waved a little flag that said, "Please be gentle," but the inspector didn't read flags. The inspector read fear. After the scrubbing, the nose hills felt tight and squeaky. The inspector smiled. "Clean!" But Pore Town didn't feel clean. Pore Town felt scraped. And scraped places do not behave politely. That afternoon, the oil river flowed faster, trying to protect the scraped walls. Cell confetti got stickier, clinging to the sore tunnel edges. Captain Friction arrived, whistling, rubbing the area with a sleeve wipe. "Ooh," Captain Friction said. "Fresh irritation, my favorite." The tiny doorway traffic slowed. A little plug formed. By night, the inspector came back with the magnifying mirror and gasped again. "They're back," the inspector cried. Pore Town groaned. "It's the loop," Mayor Barrier whispered. "It's always the loop." Now, because this is a storybook for adults, we're going to pause and explain the loop in the simplest way. When the inspector scrubs too hard, Pore Town gets irritated. Irritated walls shed differently. Sticky bits clump. Oil tries to protect. Friction adds more irritation. A plug forms more easily. The inspector sees the plug and panics again. So the inspector scrubs again. That's the loop. It's not a curse. It's not fate. It's cause and effect. Back to the story. One evening, a new visitor arrived in Pore Town. The visitor wore a calm smile and carried a small lantern that made everything look softer, not harsher. The visitor's name was Coach Consistency. Coach Consistency didn't shout. Coach Consistency didn't promise miracles. Coach Consistency simply said, "I'm here to teach the inspector a new job." Mayor Barrier almost cried with relief. "Yes, please," the mayor said. Coach Consistency walked up to the inspector, who was already reaching for the scrub brush. Coach Consistency gently placed a hand over the inspector's wrist, not forcefully, just enough to pause the motion. "We're going to try a different game," Coach Consistency said. "A game called Keep Pore Town Calm." The inspector frowned. "But the dots?" Coach Consistency nodded. "I know, but we are not going to fight Pore Town. We are going to help Pore Town do its job." Coach Consistency introduced a rule called the one-step back rule. "When you look in the mirror and your heart speeds up," Coach Consistency said, "you take one step back. One step. That's it." The inspector tried it. One step back. The dots looked smaller. The urge to squeeze softened slightly. Mayor Barrier smiled. "Distance helps," the mayor said. Then, Coach Consistency introduced another rule called the gentle exit rule. "Every day," Coach Consistency said, "Pore Town gets covered by a blanket of daylife sun protection, makeup, sweat, film, city dust. That blanket is not evil. It's normal, but it must leave at night so the doorways can breathe." The inspector nodded slowly. Coach Consistency showed the inspector a tool that wasn't a weapon, a gentle remover that dissolved the day blanket without scratching the walls. "We don't scrape," Coach Consistency said. "We lift." The inspector tried lifting instead of scrubbing. Pore Town felt relief. Mayor Barrier's walls stopped screaming. River Sabum flowed calmly instead of splashing in panic. Cell confetti floated more politely. Then Coach Consistency turned to Captain Friction, who was rubbing the chin ridge. "And you," Coach Consistency said, "you need boundaries." Captain Friction laughed. "I'm just a little rub," Captain Friction said. Coach Consistency held up a chart, showing that a little rub repeated 100 times becomes a storm. Captain Friction stopped laughing. Coach Consistency taught the inspector a new habit. Stop adjusting the mask constantly. Clean the phone screen. Don't rest the chin on the hand. Pat sweat instead of rubbing. Captain Friction grew bored. "No fun?" Captain Friction complained, drifting away. Days passed. Not dramatic days, ordinary days. The kind of days that actually change skin. And something interesting happened. The inspector started visiting Pore Town less aggressively. The inspector still noticed dots sometimes, especially on the nose hills, because nose hills are naturally busy with oil river traffic. But the inspector stopped treating every dot like a crime. The inspector stopped pressing and digging. The inspector followed the gentle exit rule at night and the one-step back rule in the mirror. Mayor Barrier's walls grew stronger. Pore Town's doorways flowed more smoothly. The traffic jams became smaller and less frequent. One day, the inspector approached with the magnifying mirror out of habit. Coach Consistency appeared beside them like a gentle reminder. "Do you want to inspect?" Coach Consistency asked. "Or do you want to support?" The inspector hesitated. This was the moment. The inspector could choose old control or new care. The inspector took one step back. They put the magnifying mirror away. "I want to support," the inspector said quietly. Mayor Barrier nearly fainted from joy. "That's it," the mayor whispered. "That's the spell." Of course, life didn't become perfect. Pore Town still had busy days. There were sweaty afternoons. There were travel days where water felt weird. There were nights when the inspector was tired and wanted to skip everything. But Coach Consistency had one more gift: the tiny fallback plan. "On tired nights," Coach Consistency said, "you don't do nothing. You do the tiniest helpful thing. A gentle lift of the day blanket, a soft pat. No scrubbing, no squeezing. Then bed." The tiny fallback plan kept Pore Town from collapsing when the inspector was exhausted. And because Pore Town didn't collapse, The inspector didn't need weekend punishment scrubs. The loop began to break for real. Now, let's visit another neighborhood in Pore Town, the Forehead Plains. The Forehead Plains were having mysterious bumps that wouldn't go away. The inspector tried washing harder. Nothing helped. Coach Consistency investigated and found a sneaky villainish character named Drippy Hair Oil, sliding down from the hairline border like syrup. Aha, Coach Consistency said. This isn't a pore crime, it's a border spill. The solution wasn't to scrub the plains. The solution was to stop the drip at the border. The inspector adjusted hair product placement, kept the border cleaner, and the Forehead Plains sighed with relief. Pore Town learned an important lesson. Sometimes the problem isn't the pore. Sometimes it's what keeps landing on it. Another day, the inspector had an event coming up. Panic returned. I need perfect skin tomorrow, the inspector cried. The scrub brush wiggled excitedly. Pore strips whispered from a drawer. Coach Consistency stepped in front of the drawer like a guardian. Tomorrow, Coach Consistency said, is not the time for war. Redness is louder than pores. Calm looks better. The inspector swallowed, trembling, and chose calm. The next day, the skin looked smoother not because every dot vanished, but because the surface wasn't angry. That was a big win for the inspector's brain. The inspector started trusting the new way. And now, dear adult listener, this is where the storybook becomes your story, because you have your own Pore Town. You have a mayor barrier who wants stability. You have a river sebum that isn't a villain. You have cell confetti that is normal. You have Captain Friction showing up in everyday ways. And you have an inner inspector who sometimes panics under harsh light. This story isn't telling you to be perfect. It's telling you that calm consistency beats panic control. If you want fewer blackhead events, you don't need to punish the city. You need to run it well. You step back from the magnifying mirror. You lift the day blanket at night without scraping the walls. You reduce friction winds. You stop the hairline drip. You use the tiny fallback